In 1914, at the beginning of the war, there was a mother who was taking a walk with her son through the Black Forest, and she took a photo of him. Now, the type of camera she used was probably something like this, and they could only take one photo at a time. The other thing about them is the film that they used had to be stored in a light-proof canister and developed later. So, of course, the mother goes to get her film developed in Strasbourg, but she realizes that she'll never be able to see that photo because all of a sudden, the war is on their doorstep, and Strasbourg is being commandeered by the military to be used as a base of operations for the war. She's forced to leave, and she leaves everything behind that she doesn't need, including the photo. And she presumes that it is lost to the war. 2 years later, in Frankfurt, Germany, which was removed from the Western Front, the mother went to go buy some more film because she was planning on taking another picture of her daughter. Now, she bought the film and she took the photo, but when she got it developed, the photo came back very weird because it was double exposed. And what that means is that the film that she bought at the store was already used. The weirder part is that the photo that was on the film from before that got developed was the same photo that she took 2 years ago of her son in the Black Forest. Somehow, that cartridge was left untouched for 2 years and had traveled 135 miles away from Strasbourg, where she left it. Is this a coincidence? No, it's synchronicity. To put it simply, synchronicity is Carl Jung's theory that there are indeed meaningful coincidences. And coincidence is exactly what the empiricist makes of these events. They are coincidental. They believe in the rule of causality, that everything has a cause and effect relationship, and that any meaningful coincidence can be explained away, even statistically. The reason we started with this story is because it starts to erode that argument, which honestly is the argument that most of us believe in. This story is crazy. It's unbelievable, and yet it was recorded by Wilhelm von Scholz. I want you to sit back and pretend that you're a mathematician and try to figure how all of these statistics would make an increasingly more improbable number. I have a list here of about 6 different things that happen. 6 different things you need to analyze and calculate the statistics for. So let's start. Number 1, the cartridge that she took the photo of the boy in Strasbourg in the Black Forest was untouched for 2 years. And the developer that she took it to did not develop it, so it remained on the film. Secondly, the cartridge somehow makes its way 135 miles northward from Strasbourg to Frankfurt, which is the specific town that the mother now lives in. Thirdly, that cartridge went to the specific store that she went shopping for film. Fourthly, nobody had recognized that that cartridge was already exposed and it wasn't new. But on top of that, nobody touched it or bought it. It was sitting there waiting for her. Fifthly, she bought it out of hundreds of different cartridges. Now, the other thing to mention, it's not like she picked it out of a crowd. The way that they would sell them is they just handed it to the customer, right? Kind of like a lotto ticket. So she was given the cartridge that she used years ago. Given to her. It found her. And the last improbable thing is simply the photos themselves. She was taking photos of her children. And that was her specific purpose in taking the photos. So she takes a photo of her son and then her daughter, and wham, they're developed and they're in the same photo. Have you done your calculations? Look at the statistical improbability of all of these things lining up and happening. It's probably an astronomical figure of how probable this event is, and yet it did happen. Wilhelm von Scholz, after recording the story, makes the observation that there seems to be an unseen attraction between objects. That sounds kind of like our modern theory of quantum entanglement. Now, we won't spend time on quantum entanglement, but we will talk about Carl Jung's argument for the statistical probability of non-causal events. You need to understand it this way. Within our realm, within this world you are in right now, there are things that are following the laws of physics, like in the macrocosm, objects with mass. And then there is the subatomic world that doesn't follow those laws at all. And it seems quite contradictory. But within these two realms, there are different laws happening. We only understand one side of it, and the empiricist is only looking at one side of it. Carl Jung makes the point that because there is another sphere, a microcosm, that isn't following those same laws, statistically, if you run the numbers, it is possible for non-causal events to happen, and statistics backs it up. They aren't probable. They would seem supernatural. I want to talk about two different types of synchronicity. One that is simply external, and one that seems to be more of a psychic event. External synchronicity can be defined as a string of meaningful events that is not necessarily meaningful to the individual's inner psychic reality. This is only meaningful because it's a crazy coincidence that is very improbable. For instance, numerology falls into this category of thing. If you get a train ticket number 305 and you're going home from work, you meet your friend when you get off the train and they bought you a sandwich that cost them $3.05. Then later in the night, you go on a blind date and you pick your date up at house number 305 on Oak Street. And then right as you're going to bed, you get a call from a 305 number. That would be a very improbable string of numbers and events. And yet that type of thing does happen. And Carl Jung was very interested in external synchronicity because you take the numbers and you punch them in and you calculate the probability that things would happen like this. And that's where it becomes easier to prove that not everything is as it seems. And that really is the purpose of external synchronicity. To the individual who is getting the number 305 repeated over and over again, they suddenly start to wonder what is happening? What is at play? Is there a higher power? It points to a greater reality in the collective unconscious, to a greater reality behind the scenes. Carl Jung had his own external synchronicity happen to him when he was a young boy. He witnessed a full oak table, very sturdy thing, suddenly snap in half, for no reason whatsoever. And later in the same night, a steel knife snapped in half at the blade. His mom, who was more superstitious, looked at him with that eye, what is happening? Something has happened here. And it really left an impression on Jung. And he carried that with him until his adult years when he started studying synchronicity and implausible acausal events. Now, personal synchronicity, or psychic synchronicity, is the most meaningful type, in my opinion. How it works and what it is doing is it is taking the unconscious dramas in the individual and it is manifesting those dramas in the real world stage of events. It manifests symbolic events or happenings, and with a very numinous quality too. These are very impactful on the individuals, and they serve to help those individuals to individuate, to have spiritual experiences, to have meaningful dreams that can predict the future. Now, I want you to try to understand how this dream and this experience I'm about to tell you was incredibly spiritual and meaningful for me. and that they can be for you. I want to point out that people don't always see the world in the way that I'm about to describe. But we'll start with the dream. In the dream, I was in a library in a circle, and we were watching a presentation given by some type of teacher. She was a woman. Two boys stood up and came over to me and beckoned me to follow them to the back of the library. They led me back further into the library until there was books all over the floor, and it started to create almost like a nature landscape of books. And we were climbing up them, traversing this interesting scape full of books. They took me to the very, very back of the library, where then there was a trapdoor amongst all of the books. They told me to go down into the trapdoor to see what was below. They were very excited about it. So I opened it and started descending. There was a ladder that I climbed down, but I only got halfway down the ladder. As I looked around, there was spider webs and spider nests all over the ceiling, this concrete ceiling of what appeared to be a basement. Spiders started falling off of the ceiling and landing all around me. A few even landed on me. This scared me sufficiently, and I climbed back up the ladder as fast as I could. At the top, they were waiting for me, and they mentioned it being a spider box. I told them not to go in it. That's the end of the dream. I want to focus on the word spider box. When I woke up, I instantly recognized the symbol of a trapdoor leading down into a dark basement as a symbol for the collective unconscious. Even the symbol of the library itself seemed to point to the personal unconscious as I was going further back and encountering more and more of this knowledge, these books, data just thrown about on the floor. And of course, at the back of it all was the chute that went down to the collective. I was very upset that I didn't pursue the spider box, that I didn't actually go down into it and face my fears of spiders, that I didn't find what was truly in the basement, as I never saw what was down there. And it upset me so much when I woke up that I knew I had to go back. I had to go into it. So I said a prayer of sorts, and I kind of meditated on it, and I said out loud, I want to see what is in the box. I know it is scary, but I know I must see it. For this is how I will individuate. Nearly a week later, the coronavirus scare happened. That seemed to coincide with the spider box, interestingly enough. The other things, though, the true synchronicity that happened wasn't just the coronavirus. I went to work a few weeks later. An employee brought over this little box and said, look at it. And I opened up the slot and a spider jumped out. A spider box. This was very meaningful to me. And it was a practical joke, but it was still meaningful. The even greater coincidence was in my own home. Now, my mother-in-law lives in my home, and she has a pet tarantula. I never see this thing. It's in her room in a corner. I don't like spiders. I'm never exposed to it, and I oftentimes forget that it even exists. But one day it molted and it shed its skin. She thought that was really cool, so she took the skin and put it in a Sour Patch Kids box and left it on the coffee table. She forgot about it. That's a terrible thing to do, because I was cleaning up the house and I saw the Sour Patch Kids box thinking, oh, cool, get some Sour Patch Kids. I stuck my hand in there. And of course, had a scare. Definitely scared me. I thought that there was a tarantula in there. Now, as soon as I put the box down, it hit me like a brick wall, just slamming into a brick wall. This is the spider box. That moment in time was probably the most meaningful thing that had happened to me all year. I can't explain to you the feeling that I got. All I can show you is how crazy that it is that it happened. Now, these separate experiences, all tied together, happened within weeks of having this dream, within weeks of the coronavirus outbreak. They all seem to correlate, and very spiritually so for me. This is my path through the dark night of the soul, the spider box, wandering about through the collective unconscious, learning more about Jungianism. Synchronicity is not something you have to have faith in. It is spiritual, but it's not a religion. All you need to do to see synchronicity is to observe. And the more you observe, the more synchronicity happens. Our synchronicity series will continue next week with part 2, where I've set up some interviews with different friends and acquaintances, and they will share some of their more meaningful synchronicities with you. We'll also be talking about psychic events and connections and how that plays into synchronicity. If you've liked this video, absolutely subscribe, get ready for next week's video, and also join our JUNGR subreddit. It's new and it's getting a little bit bigger. I have polls and questions to ask you, and if you have experiences, I want them, and I want to talk to you about them. So get on the JUNGR subreddit and message me, and we'll grow our community. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.